My sister walked into my baby's gender reveal like she was starring in her own reality show, fake belly and all. She thought she could steal the spotlight with her pregnancy glow and leave us in her shadow. But trust me, she had no idea what was coming her way. My name's Jake, I'm 25, and let me tell you, I've always tried to avoid family drama. But apparently, family drama finds you whether you want it or not. So here's the setup. My wife, Emma, and I are expecting our first kid. We thought, why not throw one of those gender reveal parties that everyone's doing these days? You know, balloons, cake, friends, family. A whole lot of fuss just to tell people if we're having a boy or girl. Now, there's one person I knew might mess things up. My older sister, Tiffany. She's 28 and has always been the center of attention, the golden child in every way. Sports trophies, honor roll, and a wedding that had everyone talking for months. Basically, Tiffany has always made it clear that if something's happening, it better be about her. And I'll admit I had a bad feeling about her showing up to our event. See, Tiffany had been posting these photos online all week, posing with what looked like a baby bump. This was her third pregnancy reveal in 7 days, which, it was weird even for her. But whatever, right? I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe she's excited for us too. But when the party finally kicked off, Tiffany showed up with this massive smile, practically glowing. She walked in like she was the main event, not even bothering to glance at anyone else. And to top it off, she placed her hand over her stomach, like she was some sort of celebrity expecting twins. I couldn't help but think, really, Tiffany? This isn't even about you. So picture this. Everyone's gathered around, buzzing about how amazing it is that we're going to have not one, but 2 babies coming into the family at the same time. People are practically lining up to talk to Tiffany, asking her about her baby. And meanwhile, I'm just standing there, biting my tongue and trying to keep a smile plastered on my face. But the more people congratulated her, the harder it was to ignore this gnawing feeling of irritation bubbling up inside me. Emma, who's the queen of avoiding drama, stood off to the side, her lips pressed into a thin line. She was doing her best to stay calm, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled about her spotlight being, hijacked. And honestly, neither was I. Tiffany was basking in the attention like she'd just discovered she was carrying the future president or something. Then, out of nowhere, Tiffany goes, "Oh, and it's a boy!" with this triumphant grin, like she just pulled off the surprise of the century. The guests gasped, clapping and showering her with congratulations, and I swear, it was like watching someone win an award they absolutely didn't deserve. And that's when it hit me. Tiffany hadn't just come to celebrate with us. No, she had shown up to own the party. The whole baby bump thing had already been suspicious, but now she was practically claiming a gender reveal of her own right, here at our party. And the craziest part? No one seemed to think it was weird that her bump had somehow doubled in size practically overnight. Emma shot me a glance, clearly trying to keep her cool, but I could see it in her eyes. She was beyond irritated, and honestly, so was I. I knew Tiffany loved attention, but this was on a whole new level. Still, I decided to keep my mouth shut for the moment. After all, the longer I let this play out, the clearer it would become that something wasn't right. So, after Tiffany had worked the room, accepting all the congratulations and beaming like she was the queen of expectant mothers, she suddenly sighed dramatically, placed a hand on her forehead, and announced that she needed to lie down. You know, typical pregnancy exhaustion. She even did this little theatrical stagger, as if she might collapse at any second. Come on, who's she trying to fool here? She glanced over at Emma, throwing her this smug look, as if her pregnancy was somehow more important, more special. Emma shot me a look that said, "Seriously?" And I just shrugged, because at this point, Tiffany was practically putting on a show for the ages. Now, don't get me wrong, Tiffany has always loved a bit of drama. Actually, she lives for it. But this was something else. There was this whole performance to her, like she'd been planning this pregnancy for an audience. Her behavior was over the top and not in a glowing mother-to-be way. It was like she'd memorized all the pregnancy symptoms out of a magazine and was determined to act them all out in one night. Then one of our aunts, bless her heart, tried to help by saying, "Oh, honey, you should really try to stay off your feet, for the baby." And Tiffany, with this angelic smile, gave a response that sounded like it came straight from a glossy magazine. "Oh, yes, the doctor did say I need to take it easy," she replied, practically reciting the words. She went on about how it's so important to listen to your body. And I swear it sounded rehearsed, like she'd read it on some Expecting Moms blog 5 minutes before walking in. But here's the thing. It was just too perfect. Her words, her expressions, even her little sighs of exhaustion. It was all so polished, so staged, that it was starting to feel like we were watching a bad soap opera. I was half expecting her to pull out a fan and start fanning herself while fainting dramatically. Honestly, the whole scene felt faker than anything I'd seen, and that was saying something. By now, I was seriously questioning everything about this pregnancy. I knew Tiffany loved the spotlight, but this was just next level. And as I watched her soak up the attention, something told me it wouldn't be long before this whole act came crashing down. I waited for just the right moment to sneak in closer, hoping to catch whatever secrets Tiffany's closest friends might be whispering about. They were huddled off to the side, giggling and glancing around like they were planning some kind of surprise. I leaned in, pretending to check the decorations, just close enough to catch a bit of their conversation. Then I heard it. One of her friends, lowering her voice, asked, "So, when are you going to show us the ultrasound? I mean, we haven't even seen it yet." Tiffany froze. And I mean froze. She had this half smile plastered on her face, but I could see the panic flash in her eyes. She paused for a second, her mouth half open, and then, like a pro at dodging questions, she switched topics entirely. "Oh, it's so crazy," she laughed nervously. "I've been so busy with everything going on, I totally forgot to bring it." "Really? Forgot to bring it?" I almost laughed out loud. This whole charade was like watching a bad improv scene. Her friend looked a little confused, but nodded, like she was willing to let it slide. Meanwhile, I was fuming. It was clear she didn't have anything to show, but somehow she was still managing to keep up this whole performance. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed Emma's hand and whispered, "Trust me, we're about to make this night way more exciting than just pink or blue balloons." Emma looked at me, a little taken aback, but I saw the sparkle of curiosity in her eyes. She knew I was up to something. Because here's the thing, this was our night. Tiffany might have thought she could stroll in here and steal the show, but I wasn't about to let her walk away with all the attention. I had a feeling the truth was just one push away from being exposed, and honestly, I was ready to be the one to give it that little nudge. The next day, I decided it was time to pull on a few loose threads. Tiffany had been putting on quite the performance, and I figured a couple of well-placed questions might be enough to see if she'd trip over her own story. So, taking a deep breath and putting on my best supportive brother's smile, I walked up to her, acting like I was genuinely thrilled for her big news. "Hey, Tiff," I said, keeping my voice upbeat. "I was just thinking, it's so exciting that we're both expecting at the same time. I mean, what are the chances, right?" She gave me this wide, slightly forced smile and nodded. "I know. Isn't it just amazing?" She was still putting on that glowing mom-to-be look, but I could sense a bit of hesitation. Perfect. That was my cue. "So, how's your doctor handling all those symptoms you were talking about yesterday?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Like, are they recommending anything specific for you to do? And when's your next ultrasound?" For a split second, her expression faltered. She let out this awkward laugh and waved a hand like she was brushing it off. "Oh, the doctor said everything's fine," she replied, almost a little too quickly. "I mean, nothing too exciting, just, taking it easy." I nodded, pretending to accept her answer, but I wasn't done yet. "Oh, that's great," I said with a slight grin. "So when exactly did they schedule your next appointment? I've heard they're supposed to be pretty regular, especially in the early stages." She blinked, her eyes widening just a little, and I could tell she hadn't expected me to go into this much detail. She fumbled for a second, then cleared her throat, stammering, yeah, well, they actually haven't scheduled the next one yet. You know how it is, busy doctors and all. Really? Busy doctors? I almost had to stop myself from rolling my eyes. It was like she hadn't even bothered to research her own story. I kept a straight face, but inside I was practically bursting. The way she was stumbling over her words told me everything I needed to know. She shifted uncomfortably, clearly looking for a way to escape. Anyway, she said, forcing another smile, I'm just so excited to have a little cousin for your baby. Isn't it going to be so cute? She tried to turn the conversation back to safer ground, but by now I was sure of it. Something was definitely off. Tiffany's whole act was starting to unravel, and I had a feeling it wouldn't take much more to bring the truth out into the open. The day after the party, I decided to make an unannounced visit to Tiffany's place. Nothing too serious, just a friendly drop-in. She opened the door wearing this oversized t-shirt that hung loosely over her baby bump, almost like she was trying to hide it. The second I saw her, I knew this was the perfect opportunity to see just how real this so-called pregnancy was. I walked in, put on my best caring brother act, and after a bit of small talk, I casually suggested, Hey Tiff, how about we go shopping for some baby stuff? You know, cribs, clothes, all that fun stuff for your little one. Now, most expectant moms would have jumped at the chance, right? But Tiffany's face did this weird thing. Like she was half smiling, but her eyes were screaming, Oh no! She stammered a little, finally mumbling something about feeling too tired to go out today. Tired again? She must have forgotten she used that excuse yesterday. Oh, that's a shame, I said, keeping my tone friendly, but pressing on just a little. I was really hoping we could pick out some cute things for the nursery. You know, even seeing some ultrasound photos would be amazing. I mean, I haven't seen any yet. That did it. Her whole expression shifted. I saw a flash of panic before she covered it up with another awkward laugh. Oh, I'll definitely show you sometime soon, she muttered, looking anywhere but at me. Then she quickly changed the topic, talking about how excited she was for my baby instead. But I wasn't done. I glanced down at her so-called bump and casually asked, Hey, mind if I feel the little guy kicking? Everyone says it's like magical. Tiffany froze, her hand instinctively pulling her shirt down tighter over her stomach. She mumbled something about not really feeling any kicks yet, and then stepped back, almost bumping into the wall behind her. If that wasn't a dead giveaway, I didn't know what was. At that moment, I was more convinced than ever. Her pregnancy was as real as a cardboard cutout. The day had finally come. We were all gathered for one of our big family dinners. Everyone was there, from grandparents to distant cousins, and the vibe was all about catching up and sharing news. And believe me, I had some news I was ready to expose. Tiffany was there, doing her usual pregnant glow act, dropping hints about how exhausting her pregnancy was, and honestly, I was done watching her soak up the attention. So, after dessert, when the whole family was gathered around the table, I decided it was time to throw down the gauntlet. I cleared my throat, and with the calmest smile I could muster, looked straight at her. Tiffany, I said, catching everyone's attention, would you mind showing us an ultrasound? You know, so we can all celebrate your little one properly. Dead silence. Tiffany's face went bright red, and she gave this nervous laugh, glancing around the table as if someone might come to her rescue. Oh, I actually don't have it with me, she stammered, forcing a smile. I must have left it at home. She tried to laugh it off, but everyone could tell she was flustered. I didn't let up. Really? That's a shame. I mean, it'd be great to see something so special. Maybe you could show it to us later. By now, the entire room was focused on her. One of our aunts, who'd been quietly observing, leaned forward and asked, Tiffany, is everything all right? You seem nervous. At that point, you could practically see the walls closing in on her. Her eyes darted around the table, and she started stammering again. Well, sometimes these things aren't always, definite. What do you mean? Someone else asked. Finally, unable to keep up the act, Tiffany muttered, It's possible it was False bump." The words tumbled out, and for a moment you could hear a pin drop. Then chaos erupted. Family members gasped. Some looked horrified, others just plain confused. My mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. Everyone started talking at once, trying to understand how Tiffany had managed to keep up such an elaborate act. The family dinner turned into a full-blown spectacle as people demanded explanations, and Tiffany tried to backtrack, mumbling about just wanting to be a part of something. It was one of those rare moments when the whole family was on the same page. Everyone felt betrayed, confused, and honestly a bit embarrassed for her. And there it was, her pregnancy, exposed as a complete fabrication. After the truth exploded at the family dinner, Tiffany stormed out, practically fuming. She didn't bother with goodbyes, just grabbed her things and made a dramatic exit, slamming the door behind her. It was like watching a character leave the stage after the show fell apart, except this wasn't just a show. This was her own life she'd been playing with, and now she was left with the pieces. The room stayed quiet for a good while after she left, everyone still processing what had just gone down. My mom just sat there, stunned, looking like she didn't know whether to be disappointed or just sad. The whole family was in a kind of shocked silence, each of us trying to wrap our heads around how far Tiffany had gone just to pull the spotlight back to herself. And as the reality of it all sank in, one thing became painfully clear. Tiffany's little performance had cost her more than just a few embarrassed moments. Over the next few days, the fallout was obvious. Family members who used to be her biggest supporters stopped reaching out. My mom, who usually defended her no matter what, was avoiding her calls. Even her closest friends, who had been right there beside her through the whole pregnancy, weren't so quick to back her up anymore. It was like everyone had realized how far she'd go for attention, and suddenly, people weren't so eager to be part of her life. For Tiffany, it wasn't just about losing face. She'd lost the trust and respect of the people who mattered most. And while she tried to downplay it, posting vague things online about moving forward and new beginnings, everyone knew the truth. She'd crossed a line, and she'd done it in front of the entire family. And me? Well, I'd be lying if I said I felt bad. I mean, yeah, it was harsh, and maybe the whole thing could have been avoided if she'd just let us have our moment. But honestly, if you're willing to fake something as big as a pregnancy just to get attention, you probably need to learn a thing or two about boundaries. In the end, the whole thing was a hard lesson, not just for Tiffany, but for everyone watching.